Hey, welcome to the Energy Tech Podcast presented by Opsite Energy. I'm your host, Mike Flores. And today we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into HMI development and best practices. So joining me here is Todd Smith, of course, with IDM. Todd, kind of introduce yourself, man.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. For everybody out there, my name's Todd Smith. One of the founding members of a company named Industrial Data Management. We grew up as a system integration company. Been around since 2008 as a company, and we're out there running and gunning, killing ones and zeros, slaying ones and zeros with our digital automation and our Scada products.
Awesome. So Todd, you founded IDM. I'd say, but back in maybe 2008 is when you did this. What were some of the things you saw were problems or issues and challenges for some of your clients that you decided to do this? Because I know you've also spent time in the private sector, but there was something where you said, "Hey, I want to start IDM." Why'd you do it?
Yeah, that drive really probably comes from just wanting to provide solutions. You know, you mentioned the private sector. I think you might have been alluding to the military, right?
Yeah.
So some of my background, and we don't need to get into that, but I went from being enlisted to an officer for the same reason I went from working for somebody to starting a business, is because I thought it could be done better, smarter, faster, using more cutting edge technology, modern tools.
Yeah. So I know from experience working with the IDM team on various different projects, one of the most notable projects that I saw that IDM delivered was at less than 2 years ago. There was an operator, a regional operator in the Port Arthur area that was moving animal fat products into a refinery in a partnership with another producer, another integrated producer. And so in short order, there was a project that needed to be delivered in about 18 weeks. That project timeline was cut to less than half of that, and IDM delivered a complete ignition solution with mobility capabilities and the ability to leverage operators and a complete suite of mobile applications that were delivered in real time. And so because of that project, I think what we're going to talk about a little bit is HMI development and some best practices, because you didn't just deliver something for control room operators. It was something that was for field operators to use as well. So we're going to kind of discuss a little bit about that on the maybe we talk a bit about Ignition, the platform itself, but the focus here is HMI development, some of those best practices. So let's kind of get started, Todd. I mean, in your mind, when you first get started, what are some of the basic things, or what's a basic approach when someone's looking at HMI and development?
Well, it's the basics are really covered from data. How quickly can I get data graphically presented to operators or users? And you mentioned Ignition. That's our more recently in our evolution as a company is our go-to Scada product. And the reason is because it's leading edge. We can tie into APIs. We can tie into all the cutting edge utilities that we want, from machine learning to you name it, we can do it on that product. And a lot of the other Scada products limit that. But not getting off into that tangent, really getting that mobility, getting those user graphics up quickly, making it deployable. And so that Scada product is one of those tools I talked about earlier, where I want to get to the customer something that's quicker, easier, the amount of time it takes to stand up, the flexibility in the back end to allow us to structure tags and to make templates. And their whole licensing model on that is significantly better than the other products on the market. So we get to deploy faster.
So give me sometimes it does start with the basics of HMI design. So give me an example of what in your mind is, hey, this is good, and an example of, hey, this is bad. Maybe start with the bad first. Hey, when you're talking about just design and feel and development, what's bad?
Bad is typically things that operators can't relate to graphically, right? So if that information, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? You've heard that back in the day. We're old guys here. We can say things like that, right? So those graphical interfaces are really designed to get information to the users, the operators, and it's not just your traditional. You mentioned earlier, it's not just control room or production operators of such. It's field people, it's marketers. We got to touch the whole value chain all the way up and down from the field device, and we got to get it into the ERP, and so that the way to get that data to those different departments or organizations or whatever the right terminology is within an organization is basically difficult if you don't start up with a lot of the standard good practices that are in the industry, and there's a lot of them out there.
So we're talking bad is the relationship between what an operator or a user sees with, a lot of modern technology techniques are like, user development or UX design, right? I mean, got some bad ones.
Right.
What about the good ones? I mean, your mind, what is good to somebody when they're talking about HMI and development?
Well, I think the good stuff is things that all operators can relate to, at least on some level. We get too many different opinions, but something that's quickly deployable that starts up on your laptop or your mobile device instantly. So there's the graphical piece, so they can consume that information, but they got to get that data to their device. And a lot of the products out there just don't handle that well. They're getting better for sure. A lot of that's driven by the industry, whether it's IoT devices in the back end, networking improvements, cybersecurity improvements. But at the end of the day, we need something that's lightweight to install, that's mobile friendly, and that the data can be realized quickly. Large amounts of data, right? A trend, if you will.
So when you're serving up, I call it serving up a good design in your mind. What is that? Is it, hey, you start with a really good product, and I know one of the highlighted ones, of course, is Ignition. You can't help but talk about it.
Yeah, it's by
Yeah, so just because of the nature, not just of its growth, but its capabilities. So we'll use that for an example. But when you talk about Ignition, um, what makes it good? Like, is it, hey, I can send something up and serve it up in a web application? Like, what makes it good?
Yeah, so that product specifically is web driven.
Yeah,
There's different flavors of it. Technically, I don't want to get off into the technical stuff. I mean, there's Java and there's HTML. It's kind of the two major flavors. But HTML is where everything's at. You look at the consumer markets, Amazons of the world, for example. It's all web based. It's highly driven. It's graphical. It's large amounts of data, and that stuff is just not. It's being seen now in our industry, but 8 years ago, it wasn't. Everything's old school bitmap graphics or JPEG graphics and things like that. Takes time to load the screen.
right.
Takes time to realize the data on the screen, and that stuff. It seems 3 to 5 seconds for a screen to load seems like a minor thing in an instance, but you take that across a large operation. There's alarms going off. There's reaction time. So that getting back to the Ignition piece, it's just deployable, loads fast, it installs quickly. The product itself is easy to recover. Your laptop crashes or your PC
Right.
dies or whatever, you can recover from it extremely fast as well. So there's a lot of things that go into that answer. But for the most part, we want to be able to get data realized quickly.
Right.
And you highlighted one of our earlier projects. So we started that project with little to no scope definition. We started with an issue like, can you get data from this device? It's not inside of our industrial network. And can you do it quickly because we have a contractual obligation to do so? And
Right.
so the only product that we could do that with is Ignition. There was no other way. In fact, they have another product, a couple different products on site from different industries, and none of those products could connect to that and provide the flexibility in the data consumption side of it, and then turn around and push it back out to the customers, the third-party customers in the contract. So that's a kind of a good example of not just control room solutions. We needed to get data for contract purposes out the door as well.
So sticking to kind of that theme on HMI design, when it's done poorly, what I'm hearing you saying is that it um, creates. What I'm hearing is like a technical debt. It'll create issues and poor HMI design. Kind of, in your opinion, you think that's one of the, while it's a benefit of ignition, leaning on that with poor design, do you think that there's some huge impact there when you don't have that developed right?
Yeah, for sure. We rely heavily on ISA standards, and uh, that really comes from the developer more than anything. Their knowledge base and being able to do that. So you could, ignition aside, you could still have successful projects, and there's plenty out there. There's plenty of examples with other competitive products to Scada products, but you can have all that. You just follow industry standards, get on ISA 95, make sure you have a good tag structure, make sure you have a good file folder structure, make sure that you standardize your tagging conventions,
Right.
make sure that you come up with some type of theme on your graphics, whether it's a color scheme, whether it's you're going to draw pipes blue for gas, orange for water. And then they have some of the other industries that'll focus on grayscales. And as long as you're standardizing and you can make templates, then it's good. I have this thing I've always, when I mentor folks and young engineers in the industry, I always say the difference between a good programmer or a good program is standards, right?
Right.
Patterns. So if I go follow ISA, and even if I mess up my standard, in other words, I put the file folder structure instead of area to process cell incorrectly, and I swap those two, but I swapped it everywhere. As a programmer or as somebody who's maintaining that system, it's easy to identify, and you can still be efficient and follow through. So it's really boils down to constructing good standards at the root for a SCADA system, which is the field devices, tagging, things like that.
Yeah, and so for hopefully you're listening in. One of the things that we like to do here on the podcast is make sure that we can do a technical discussion, but we want it to make sense for you in terms of deployment of products, right? Because there's lots of I'm just going to say it. Hey, there's lots of tech nerd shows that come out there, and you can quickly lose effectiveness because you want to kind of target the issue, right?
Right.
And in this case, for HMI design, what you're saying is, hey, if we're going to have good design, then we need to tailor our design, number one, to the audience, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
That's number one. So you're designing for the right type of users and folks. And there's lots of challenges around that because you're not just designing for a control room operator, but you might be designing for an automation tech in the field, a lease operator that's operating, measurement tech.
An analyst, marketer. Yeah.
Yes, an analyst and a marketer. So whatever they're looking at has to hit that audience the right way so they can make decisions is really what you're saying, right?
Yeah. In my opinion, and maybe that's driven by experience, is that they need information to make decisions quickly so they can impact production in a positive way. And as an integrator or an engineer, you just kind of you take that mental focus and then you build on it.
Yeah. So one of the key things about Ignition, and in my personal experience, is the ability to create, cutting edge design the same way you would if you're developing graphics on other UX design platforms. What's real common right now is the use of products like React.
Right.
So you've got all kinds of different things. If you're trying to build short order applications, there's the introduction of things like Streamlit seems to be a big deal because people are trying to solve short problems
Right.
using.
And Streamlit's a great product for the use cases that we use it for. So.
Yeah, exactly. And what I was alluding to with that, Todd, is that one of the great unique pieces of Ignition is because it's a great middleware product is we can bridge the data to something like Snowflake. And then on that public facing side, we can give an application over to different groups, whether it's a group in data science, operations, still leveraging the same Ignition data.
Yeah, once they get into their enterprise, it's a whole nother layer of tools and utilities those customers or those consumers use. And you're absolutely right. You mentioned Streamlit and Snowflake. Those are some of our favorite tools as well.
Yeah. So in keeping with kind of HMI design, so consistency is a big deal. Yeah, you mentioned that, but everyone wants the ease of navigation, right? Um, kind of in you know in your experience, creating something intuitive. What are some of the steps that Todd and team are thinking about?
Yeah, the user interface is definitely one of the, I say it's one of the bigger challenges because it's a creative solution for users and for a type of user. You could boil it down in different groups and things like that. But um, so, user A might be navigating through graphics. User B might want to navigate through tables of data. So you really need to identify that. But here's the key to all this. And you touched on it, or at least you asked on it early on, which is, how do you start a good Scada application or HMI application? And it boils down to standards. It boils down to the standardization of your tag structure, because now we can take our standardized tag structure to our Scada, take our standardized Scada structure into Snowflake. We can model it, and then you have that structure for consumers in the enterprise level to consume. Do analytics on, and we haven't even we don't even know we don't know in the data lake of the enterprise when it comes to, there's just so many opportunities. And the other thing we haven't really touched on either is one of the reasons we lean so heavily on the Ignition product is because we are currently implementing things like machine learning and AI hooks right into our real-time production applications, whether it's doing the light lifting on reporting or doing heavy lifting on analysis. So we need those standardized tag structures, easy to consume, easy to model, and then enterprise layer, easy to produce more user interface products.
Yeah, Todd, and so you're kind of touching something. So let's kind of do this look ahead here because, whether you're talking about, and Ignition seems to be a center stage here, right? Because of its quick deployment in your mind, where do you see the growing role of Ignition and integration with like AI or machine learning and maybe some mobile and cloud-based applications, right?
Right. So when it comes to industrial SCADA products, and this is just my own experience and my own research, so I'm not talking on behalf of the industry. Ignition is the go-to product for anything AI, anything machine learning. In fact, as an organization, we specialize in those AI and machine learning items, so therefore we heavily use Ignition. That's one of our deciding factors. So kind of a tail wagging the dog type of thing, but there's just not other products out there that can do it. They can't do it cost effectively. Their licensing model is difficult. They're still have some sort of back end that is coded on older coding standards or older coding protocols, languages. And Ignition allows you to open up the Pandora's box of connect anything to this. It can get to the consumer market. It can get to the industrial market. It can get to the end devices.
Right.
You can use it as a local HMI. You can use it as a SCADA. You can use it on your enterprise as whatever type of server, document control. But that product allows us to tie directly into the industrial SCADA environment with AI. And there's just not other products on the market that allow us to do that.
Yeah.
And that's and honestly, as a company, where we're traveling to in our big picture is we're going down that whole AI services because it makes sense.
Well, let's cut to that because the sponsors of this podcast is IDM, Industrial Data Management, founded in about 2008. It's a systems integrator that specializes in working with energy customers anywhere in the value chain, starting at drilling, completions, flowback production, midstream, the downstream space. So, Todd, you've driven this company. Kind of give us three highlights of things that IDM can do specifically for an industrial customer, especially in the energy space.
Yeah, so we consider our company to be a technology company.
Yeah.
We definitely started as system integration. We grew up and dabbled in a little bit of EPC. We pulled back and just focused on technology because that's what's in our DNA for the most part. But we go and we can walk down plants. We can look from the I&E side. So we got some field services in one of our business pillars. We have some other cybersecurity business pillar that focuses just on cybersecurity, particularly in the industrial environment, the OT side of the fence. And then we have the process engineering. And we do a lot of, this is not a marketing term, but we have some plant whisperers in our group, right? So they get into some of the gas plants and they understand them extremely well. So we model those plants. We have a couple customers in the immediate area of where OpSite is currently located, the control room just up the street, that we have implemented a lot of the tools here that allow us to optimize their plants so they can reduce staffing. And they didn't lose staff; they just had staff become operator maintenance personnel.
Yeah,
and that's another touch on the ignition product too, because they were able to take it out of the brick and mortar to the truck inside of the geofence and still operate their plant while looking at a valve.
Well, Todd, you kind of alluded to something there that's going to be part of the OpSite podcast, and that is how did IDM take a plant and get it to be unmanned? So, and using technologies to do so, and then take it a step further and talk about the introduction of AI and machine learning to do that. So I think that's on an upcoming episode.
Yeah, we got some great stuff coming up. Very exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, so
we got a bunch of nerds in the company that just can't stop,
So what I'm hearing about IDM is a dot connecting organization that focuses on data first, because that is the centerpiece of any company is their data. Which IDM does, and then
industrial data management. We had the foresight years ago to see that's the real value, and that's what we've been after since day one.
Awesome. Well, Todd, just kind of just to recap a little bit, thoughtful HMI design tips that you brought out, some best practices on why you
ISA
want to
95, young man. So, and then standardizing on your tag structure, making decisions on your graphical structure.
Yeah. So, Todd, one last thing about that, because what a lot of folks don't know is ignition is essentially free to begin with. That means you can grab it right now.
Yeah. Right? Not only is it free to grab and download and develop 100%, test 100% free. It just has a license every 2 hours. You just have to reset it. You just type your password, hit reset. They also have a maker edition, and it's got all the same industrial drivers on it, that you can have 3 personal licenses and use for non-commercial purposes, for personal use. And you can take that application, you sit at home, you open and close your garage door, and you're like, oh, I want to do this to a conveyor, I want to do this to a pump. You can take that and turn around, put it back inside your plant, import your code, and do things like that. It's really another factor about ignition. It's got free online training, and I feel like I'm plugging ignition, but it's because ignition makes IDM successful.
Right.
That's why we love that product.
Yeah, and so 2 things we want you to do before we go is, number 1, we want you to like and subscribe to us here at OpSite Energy. Send us comments. We want to add to the community. So if you're an automation engineer, an automation tech, you're an I&E superintendent, an automation superintendent, an engineer, a production engineer, if you're doing anything in that value chain on the drilling, completions, flowback, midstream, production, downstream, treatment, refinery, if you're in that space and you want to ask questions and help, push out a problem, we're happy to talk about it. One of the final things is that aside from OpSite Energy, you can find Todd on his own, the Toddcast, which features also additional automation topics for industrial automation and anything energy. So
yeah, thanks for that small plug there. But we do a lot of technical deep dives into whether it's coding, we have a couple partners as well. IDM is a partner with Snowflake. We're a partner with Tossibox. So we feature some of those products as well and talk about those solutions.
Awesome. Well, here we go. So thanks for tuning in here.
Thanks, everyone.
To the podcast. And we're going to catch you next time. Like and subscribe.